The rain was coming down heavily one night as a woman with long black hair came up the stairs with a basket of laundry in her hands. She looked around and then walked down to the basement. It was cold, dark, and damp because of the rain. Her name was Shigo. She put down the basket of laundry and opened up a huge white washer, picking out the detergent to use. She dumped the dirty wash in and put it on for high. Shigo never really liked the storms. They always gave her nightmares as a child. I have to tell Drew we need to get a better light down here, she thought, and then she pulled the silver chain and flicked on the light. Running up the stairs, she opened the door and screamed as she bumped into her husband. Shigo, sweetheart, are you okay? Draken asked, as she stood there shaking from shock. Shigo laughed and fixed her shirt. Yeah, you just scared me, that's all. You know I hate the storms. Draken laughed and then sat down a huge pile of papers on the table next to the door and came over and held Shigo, who was still shaking. "Aw, it's okay. Don't be scared. If you don't like doing the washing being down here in the basements when there's a storm outside, just let me know," Draken said, holding her close. "I am your daughter. I'm okay," Shigo said, laughing. "I know how to protect myself," Shigo said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Oh, really?" Draken said jokingly, leaning down to kiss her. Dr. Draken was married to Shigo, obviously. He was tall and slender and had light blue skin, and he had black hair like his wife. After breaking the kiss, Shigo told him that she was going to finish dinner. "What are we having?" Draken asked, as he picked up the rolls of paper and then walked out of the room. "Spaghetti," she said, calling back. Draken smiled because spaghetti was one of his favorite meals to have at dinner time. He closed his doors, which led to the basement, and walked off to his lab. It had been several months since they were married. Their wedding was very nice. It took place in Hawaii on a calm beach. Shigo invited her brothers and her mother and father, who were still very happy that she found someone who she loved. Draken, on the other hand, didn't have anyone to invite. He couldn't find his mother, so he decided to invite Monty and Dia and Amy, who were engaged as well. Both neither Draken nor Shigo will forget the day when Dementor kidnapped Draken and put his lifelong with Shigo's and Monty's and Amy's lives in danger. They both spent the honeymoon at the Bahamas after going on a cruise together. Shigo loved Draken and Draken loved Shigo, and they knew no one could ever tear them apart. But that's what they thought. Shigo walked into the kitchen, drained the water from the strainer. Lights started to flicker as she stopped dead in her tracks. They had flickered about a minute or two so, but even one flick crept Shigo out. "Glad that's over," she muttered to herself as she poured the bowls of spaghetti and sat them on the table. Shigo walked back to the sink when there was a loud crack of lightning and a huge roar of thunder. Shigo screamed, shaking all over, and flew to the ground, whimpering like crazy. As brave as Shigo was, there was something that did scare her. Opening her eyes, Shigo gulped hard to find out that the lights were out. "Thank you, Shigo, for wearing your gloves today for no reason," she thought to herself as her hands started to glow green. Trying not to burn anything, she got up on her feet and walked to the kitchen with her hands as her lights. "Drew!" Shigo called out into the darkness. "Where the hell are you?" she muttered. She slowly walked down the long hallway, knowing Draken and the henchmen, and from the size of their lair, they could be anywhere. Then suddenly something quickly ran past Shigo's leg, making her scream. Kneeling down, she came face to face with a small pink poodle. "Puddles, what are you doing here? I thought I put you in your cage for the night," she said, picking up the small poodle up and turning off the glow from her hands. Like a little Komodo, Puddles was breathing heavily in her arms, but she managed to stumble down the hall. "Don't worry, we'll find a light switch," she said, scratching behind his fluffy ear. "Good boy," she said, cooing him for more. "Draken, where are you?" Shigo said, now getting more annoyed with her husband. "Shigo!" Shigo quickly turned around with her fighting mode when she heard her name being called from the cloak closet. It was like a moan, almost like a whisper. Who's there? Shigo said. Help me, said the voice. This is stupid, Shigo thought to herself, as she quickly opened the door, looking in the darkness and seeing nothing. She shrugged her shoulders when she was about to close the door. 3 people came running out screaming. Screaming at the top of her lungs, Shigo dropped the dog, who ran off at full speed. Flickering the switch next to the closet drawer, stood Draken, who was laughing hysterically. Standing next to him were 2 henchmen. They were on the ground holding their stomachs and laughing their heads off. What the fuck is your problem? Shigo said, shaking from head to toe. You should have seen your face, Draken said, still laughing. Oh, you think making me almost wet my pants and scaring me to death is funny? Shigo said with a small smile upon her face. Yeah, Alex, a tall, slender henchman, said, pounding his fists on the ground like a child. Oh yes, Alex, you are very mature, Shigo said sarcastically, walking past the 3 of them. Dinner's done, if anyone wants some, Shigo said, walking down the hall. Draken went to go have dinner with his wife, and then the henchman went down to another others to order pizza. They have stopped laughing yet? Shigo asked, twirling her food. Listen, we're sorry, Draken said. It's okay, say sorry to Puddles. He was more scared than I was, she said, looking down at Draken, sitting like a beggar next to Draken, the comrade Puddles. Sorry, buddy. Here, have some dinner too, Draken said, getting up and putting some spaghetti into his little purple bowl. So why did you, Alex, and Tyler decide to scare the shit out of me? Shigo said jokingly. I don't know, but I mean, it was a dare. I'm sorry, Draken said with food in his mouth. It's okay. I don't care. Except you better watch out, because I'm going to get you back, she laughed. And how are you going to do that? He asked. I have my ways, Shigo said, winking at him. So the 2 of them talked for a little while longer, until there was a long silence, and Shigo brought up the question that made Draken very nervous. Drew, what do you think about us having children? Shigo said, crossing her legs. Draken was looking down at the time, stopping as he opened his eyes, wild in shock. Children? He asked in a small voice, looking up. Shigo nodded her head, kept telling him that she really wanted him really badly. I never thought about it so much. I mean, wait, why do you? He asked, still in shock. Shigo got up and emptied her plate, along with his, and put them in the dishwasher. There was a special sway in her hips, which made Draken just stop and stare, smiling evilly as she turned around. Well, I mean, it's up to you, Shigo said. What? Wait, where did you get the idea of us having children? Draken asked, still confused. Ever since I was a kid, I've always loved little babies, and I always want to become a mother, Shigo said, sweetly. Something is definitely up with her tonight. She usually isn't like this. If that's what you want, okay, but don't you think it's a bit early to start a family? He asked more nervously as she walked over to him and sat on his lap. Draken was starting to have the urges he never felt before, the kind when he saw Shigo strapped on the board at the Dementor's lair. It's never too early for something, she said in a romantic voice, running her fingers through his hair. Shigo, I have something to tell you, he said, letting out a deep breath. What is it, dear? She asked, still her head. I'm a virgin. He looked up to her with her baby green eyes. You're a virgin? She said repeatedly, and had said, Yeah, afraid so. Draken was looking down, blushing. Never really had any girlfriends in my school, so it just never happened. Everyone thought I was a loser, he whispered, still looking down. Listen to me. You're not a loser. You're a wonderful, handsome man that I love. Don't listen to those bitches for their nothing, she said, pulling his face up. I love you, and don't you forget that, okay? She said. Draken smiled and rested his hands on his perfect waist. Oh, okay. And they started to kiss. Within minutes, Draken picked her up and run her fingers through his hair while she starts to take off his lab coat. He took her to the bedroom. She wrapped her arms around and kept kissing him. Oh, I'm so scared, Draken thought as he lay her down and laid on top of her. While he did this, Draken kissed her neck. Things got farther and farther until they were both under the covers, without anything on. Staring down at his wife, he couldn't believe what he was about to do. "What if I hurt you?" he said. "Why would you hurt me?" she said, smiling, wrapping her arms around his neck some more and kissing him on the lips as he slowly continued to move on. Shigo loved this as he picked up pace. Shigo never fought to leave his side and would never want to leave her side. And then they made love. That kind that Draken always wanted. The kind of his dreams. Not rough, just right. And so the rain has poured and they finally drifted off to sleep after their night of pleasure. Little did they know in a week or so, they were both in for a very big surprise. Waking up the next morning, Shigo slipped out of bed and went to take a shower. It was 5:30 in the morning when she woke, looking at the clock after she got up and surprised. 5:30? Wow, I never get up this early, she muttered as she started to blow the hairdryer. After coming out of the bathroom wearing a light green top and black jeans, Shigo noticed that Draken was still asleep. "Men," she muttered to herself as she walked down the stairs to make breakfast. Draken woke up a half hour later and took his shower and came down. He decided to wear his regular dark blue lab coat, which he found on the ball on the floor next to the bed. Dusting it off, he walked down the stairs and poured himself some coffee. "Morning, dear," he said, sweetly kissing him. "Morning," he responded, kissing her back. "What do you want to eat?" Shigo asked, flipping a pancake. "I'll have anything, oh boo-hoo," Draken said sarcastically as he scanned the villain's newspaper. "What is it?" Shigo asked, turning around. "Looks like Kim Possible and her dumb blonde sidekick seem to have captured Duff Gilligan. Again," Draken said, setting down the paper and drinking his drink. "Oh, what did he do this time?" Shigo asked. "It says he robbed 8 golf courses stores and it says he stole 350 golf balls," Draken said, laughing. "That man did not get enough of his golf, can he?" Shigo said, handling him a plate of pancakes and giving him more coffee. "Thank you," he said as he sat down. After eating their breakfast, they both went down to his lab and working on their plans to defeat Kim Possible. Again, days had passed and the finally 2 or 3 weeks rolled around. It wasn't a horrible rainy night went around, and while they were eating dinner, something happened to Shigo that she didn't expect. So anyway, Draken's voice trailed off as he looked down at the table at Shigo, who was frozen. She seemed to be hunched over and was coughing. "Shigo?" he asked, starting to get up. "I don't feel so good," she moaned as she fell off her chair. "Shigo!" Draken said, running over to see what was wrong. "Oh, my lower stomach is hurting," she said as she held her lower stomach. "Okay, you're sick, Draken said, so worried that he didn't know what he was going on. "You should go lie down and I'll take care of you. Do you think you can walk?" he asked, trying to help her get back on her feet. Shigo stumbled up on her feet and took a few baby steps down, then fell on her knees with her dark hair hanging over her face. "Okay, I'm going to carry you to the bedroom where you can rest," he said, picking her up and walking down the hall. Shigo felt dizzy. Looking up at Draken, she saw two of him. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she said, as her eyes rolled in the back of her head. "Don't worry. If we need a doctor to come or get you to the hospital, we'll do that. Everything is going to be okay," Draken said, as scared as Shigo. She was all he had, and he couldn't stand to see her hurt. Walking up to their bedroom, he laid her down on the bed and gave her extra pillows as she had her head up. She was extra pale and was sweating. Draken got a chair from the other room and bought it so he could be with his wife. "It's okay. I'm here," he said, holding her hand. "Where is the extra pail?" And she was sweating. "Dang, where is this pain coming from?" he asked. I think down where my hands are," Shigo said weakly. Draken looked down and removed her hands. "Shigo, dear, I'm going to see if I can help. All right?" he said. "Fine," she moaned back, looking up at the ceiling. "Okay, what dose of the pain does it feel like?" Draken asked. "It's sharp and it feels like a bruise. It hurts so much," Shigo said, as tears coming down from her face. Draken was asking these questions because he even thought of a scientist to get his PhD and was somewhat of a doctor as well. Oh, I'm going to press a little, okay? Because I may know what it is. You will have to work with me, he said, in his normal tone. He pressed around where she said the pain was coming from. If it's what I think it is, I'm sure she'll be surprised. Draken fought as he finished. Sitting back down in the wooden chair, Shigo looked at him. A smile came upon her pale face. It's gone. I don't feel any more pain, she said. It's gone just like that? Draken asked, raising an eyebrow. Draken, I think I'm going to be sick, she said, leaning her head over the bed. Just in the nick of time, Draken grabbed the trash can, which was next to the bed, and put it under her head. He couldn't look. When people threw up, it just made him sick. So he turned his head until she was done. Oh, what the hell is wrong with me? She said as more tears streamed down her warm face. Don't worry. I think you just need to get some rest for the night, Draken said, emptying the basket. When Draken came back in, Shigo was already asleep. Smiling, he walked over to her and kissed her forehead and dimmed the lights, leaving the door halfway open in case she needed him. Draken walked back to his lab to think. What could be wrong with her? He wondered, pacing around the room with his hands behind his back. Opening a huge chest of books and pictures came upon Life in Its Body book. Flipping through the large pages, he came upon the lower half of the body. Looking down the scale it told, and showed the different organs which where Shigo is in pain. Shocked as he looked down, he stumbled over his chair and fell onto it. He was breathing heavily from what he had discovered. How could this happen? I mean, I guess it wouldn't be so bad, what I'm saying. This is wonderful, Draken thought, gulping hard. Managing to get back on his feet and stay steady, he walked back over to the book and looked down. The book didn't lie. It said for a woman that has sort of pain, it's a 50-50 chance that Friday night 2 weeks ago, Draken had gotten Shigo pregnant. After being in the hospital with a new baby boy, Abby, and her boyfriend, soon-to-be husband Greg, went home to where they live. Drew was born and raised in Philadelphia. His mom and dad lived on the small cottage in the woods. Greg worked with his brothers in some sort of business. He never really told Abby what he did for a living, but he told her it was very complicated. One quiet afternoon on a week, coming home from the hospital, little Draken was crawling around the house. It got to the point where his mother couldn't find him. Drew? His mother asked as she walked into the living room. Looking down at the fireplace, she saw a few of his toys. One of the small brown teddy bear that his dad had given him when he was born. There were some other things like his house blue and black rattle, his free rubber keys that looked like to chew on, and stuffed giraffe that was quickly squishing and had colorful patches on it. He was nervous because she thought of the house wasn't so big. The baby could get hurt easily. Where did you go? She asked, looking around. She realized that the bikini was gone too. His binky was gone too, so she would never let anyone take it from him, even if he would scream until he got it back. Abby was getting nervous. He never let her baby boy out of sight, and she was already starting to call out his name in a yell, and until she heard the back door was open. Drew! She screamed, running to his back door and looking around. Draken and his family lived deep in the woods. None would be able to find you unless you were lost. His whole backyard was acres and acres of land. His mother loved horses, so they built a stall next to the house in the back. She owned one darling horse. Damn, Drew, where are... Abby's voice trailed off as she screamed as she saw her baby boy with his binky in his mouth in the open field crawling towards a rattlesnake. Jumping out in front of the house, she ran for her life, threw the brown leaves into the meadow. The little boy was only a few feet away, and the snake's tail was rattling. Running by a stick, she turned round and grabbed it. The snake held its head up and its teeth were out, and was ready to plunge the little giggling baby, who was smiling, crawling closer and closer. Then Abby quickly grabbed Drew and waved the long stick snake's face. Get away from us, now! She hissed. The snake just stared, and finally within minutes slithered away. Breathing heavily from all the running she just experienced, she watched the evil snake go away, and then she looked down at Drew, who was giggling. "You're so bad," she joked. Walking back to the house, she closed the door and locked the glass door. She set Drew in his red high chair and opened the refrigerator. Abby then opened 2 little glass jars of baby food and stirred them into a small bowl. "Give me your binky," she said, holding out her hand. Drew looked it away, trying not to give it up. "Okay, no lunch for you then," she said, getting up and walking back to the fridge. Draken started to cry as he held his arms out for his mommy. The binky dropped on the floor as she walked over to rinse it off with ice water. "Don't worry, sweetie, I was just joking," Abby said, starting to feed him. Draken woke up and realized he must have fallen asleep on his chair last night because his head was resting on the table in front of him. Looking up, blinking his eyes, he twisted his neck. "I'm never going to sleep in a chair like this again," he thought, from the pain of his neck, trying to remember the thought of his dream. It was so weird he kept thinking about his childhood and all. Draken then remembered about Shigo, her pain, and the baby. Jumping out of his chair and dusting him off, he made his way back upstairs to check on Shigo and how she was feeling, and tell her the news. Draken took a deep breath as he knocked on the door. He didn't want to hear her say a word. He just popped his head in, looking around, and then he spotted Shigo. She was still asleep, but that's what he thought. Quietly coming into his bedroom, Shigo scared him. "You came in," she said, rolling over with her eyes open. How does she do that? Draken thought. "Are you feeling any better?" he asked, sitting on the bed next to her. "Yeah, a little, I guess." "What is wrong with me?" Shigo asked in her normal sassy tone. Draken then took a deep breath and looked deeply in her eyes. "Shigo, last night I went through some medical books, and well, if my calculations are correct, you might be just pregnant," he said kindly. When Shigo heard the words, pregnant, she almost fainted. "I'm sorry, did you say pregnant?" she said, coming back to Earth. "If my calculations are right, yes, but I'm not 100% sure. It's a 50-50% chance," he said nervously. A big, wide smile stretched upon Shigo's pale face as she flew him into his arms. "Oh, and I'm so happy if we're going to have a baby together, Draki," she said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I never thought it would happen," she said, smiling. "Neither do I," Draken said in still happy shock, releasing the hug Shigo had asked how she would know if it was true. "A blood test is that simple," Draken said, smiling. Shigo's wonderful smile went from scared frown. "What?" she said, jumping out of bed, running down the hall. "There's no way you're getting my blood," she said as she entered the living room. Draken, who was still confused, followed her. "What? Wait. Why? What's your problem?" he asked. "What's my problem? I'll tell you what my problem is. I don't want to talk about it," she said as she stormed out of the room, leaving him there. "Why the hell do women get like this?" Draken asked himself as he chased after her. "I just don't know if I can get through with blood and needles, okay?" Shigo said, leaning her head against the metal door, which led to the training rooms in her lair. "Why is that?" he asked. "Needles and blood scare me. This is so embarrassing. Why am I even telling you this?" she screamed. Draken tried to go after her, but she turned around and locked with the metal door. "Shigo, what did I do?" he asked, putting his hand on the door. "Nothing. I just don't want to think about it now. Just go away. I'll be out soon," she said, sobbing. And with that, Draken knew that he wasn't going to get anywhere near her at the moment, so he decided to go for a walk and let her calm down. Shigo suddenly began to cry as she crawled up into a little ball. She wasn't mad at Draken. She was just so scared. Ever since she was a child, she had nightmares about being back in the hospital where her dad died and what she saw, which wished she never did. Meanwhile, Draken was enjoying his walk. So many questions were pondering his head. What did I do? All I said was a needle and blood. I thought Shigo wasn't scared of anything. I guess I was wrong. The weather was nice and the sun was out and the little birds were chirping like crazy. Draken was at Glade and then he didn't cut his wrists that day. All because of what he did. He would never find out what life so fragile, and you should be grateful at that moment God gives you. Walking down the stone path that led him and Shigo up to the top of the lair, he came upon a road. He checked the white mailbox and found no mail. After walking for miles without stopping, Draken was out of breath. He looked around and realized that ahead was a park where the little children of ages were playing on the swings and the sides of the slides on in the sandbox, crossing the street with caution so he didn't get hit. He walked over and sat down on the brown saltwood bench, smiling and enjoying the breeze, looked around the little children. They were so young and they had their whole life ahead of them. "Mister, I think you dropped these." A little girl with sandy-colored hair, which was pulled up in 2 braids, came over. She had light brown eyes and she was wearing short overalls, which were kind of the jean kind. Holding out her hand, Draken looked down. "Oh, thank you," Draken chuckled, as the little girl handed him the keys and ran back off to play with the other children on the swings. Smiling happily what just happened, he was just excited that he was going to become a father. Not being scared anymore, he wished Shigo was with him now, sitting there with just being normal villainous family and watching the little children play. "I wonder if she's really going to carry my child," he thought, as she looked out to his right and saw the sun shine brightly, letting out a deep sigh with his hands in his palms and looked down. "I'm sorry, okay?" a voice said from behind him. Looking up and around, next to him stood Shigo. She was coving the sunlight, which was good because getting in her eyes. "Shigo," he said, surprised to see that she had left the house. "I'm sorry if I upset you, but it's not your fault," Shigo said, sitting down and cutting him off in a rude way, squinting her beady eyes, and looked all around where the happy kids are. "I was looking for you," she said, turning her head in that direction. "Well, yeah, I should have told you that I was going out, but you were pretty upset. Why were you all shaky up at the house?" Draken asked in his scratchy tone. "Ever since I was a little girl, I was afraid of 3 things. Storms, needles, and blood," Shigo said. "It was the day my father died and I went to the hospital and got lost. I was 12 years old. 12 years old I was exposed to. Too much violence. I remembered it was a stormy day and my dad was coming home from work. I was in our house, looking out the window for him to come home. My brothers were away for the weekend with my mom. My parents were divorced at the time, and it was the weekend alone with my dad. It feels just like how it happened. I was waiting for him to come home when this silver car pulled up in front of the house. A big smile came upon my face as I remembered because I was sick, and I called him just to come home and take care of me. Coming up the stone stairs led to the front door, and a bunch of kids in a Jeep that was zipped up racing down from the street. My dad and I heard them screaming, and they must have gotten in a fight in the car, because one of the guys whipped out a gun. I don't remember his face, but it was covered with a black ski mask or something. My dad was screaming for me to get down because he heard the gun be rigged, and then everything seemed to be happening so slowly. I tried to get back in the door and save him, but the man with the gun shot and killed my father. I opened the door, screamed for help, and one of my neighbors heard the gunshot and called 911. When I got to the hospital, Shigo trailed off because she was already starting to cry. Some of the kids were staring at her and eavesdropping, but Draken gave them a look and they ran away, burying her face in her hands as she held her hand on Draken's shoulder. "Shh, it's okay. Don't be upset. I'm here. It's okay," Draken said, holding up Shigo in his arms, keeping her close. He never thought that half of her life was so depressing. Pulling away gently, she wiped her tears from her eyes. Shigo felt so stupid. "I didn't mean to bite your hand off earlier. I just needed some alone time, that's all. I'm excited about if I'm going to have a baby with you. I want to go home and have a blood test. I'm not scared anymore," she said, taking his hand and dragging him out of the park. Draken smiled as they left the park. He was happy that she was back to her old normal nasty sassy self, the Shigo he loved. Going back up to their lair, Draken took Shigo to the lab and set her down on the chair. Putting on rubber gloves and finding a vein, he got a fresh needle. "It might just hurt a little bit, okay?" he said, before he interjected the needle into her right arm. "Okay, let's just get this over with." She winced at not looking. Shigo was strong, and Draken knew that it was nothing compared to when she had fought Kim. After taking her blood and putting on a band-aid on her arm, she told him that she was going to go shopping for a little bit because she was bored. "Okay, have a good time. I'll be here when you get back," he said, putting a dark blood red balloon in the spinner that would soon tell the results. It was only a matter of time before Draken and Shigo knew if they were going to be parents after all. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.